Father's Day came, and my daughter decided to hand me a gift that still stings when I think about it. She tossed me a crumpled $3 lottery ticket and laughed, saying, "If you win anything, Dad, half of it belongs to me." Meanwhile, she gave her father-in-law a $14,000 cruise package, and the kicker? She used my money to pay for it. I forced a smile, but inside, my S-ball churned with anger. That little slip of paper felt like an insult, not a gift. What she didn't know was that ticket would later turn my whole life upside down. It won me $150 million. And instead of giving her half, I decided to give her something she truly deserved, a lesson she'd never forget. At dinner that night, Lily's voice carried across the table, sharp as ever. "Here you go, Dad. Your gift. If you win, don't forget, half is mine." She flicked the ticket at me like it was trash. I caught it, my old fingers smoothing the wrinkles against the tablecloth. $3. That's all it was worth. I stared at those numbers for a moment, trying to wrap my head around what she had just done. "Well, very thoughtful of you, sweetheart," I managed to say, pasting on a smile I didn't feel. But before I could even catch my breath, Lily clapped her hands and raised her voice like she was the star of a show. "Oh, but wait. I still haven't given David his present yet." She reached behind her chair and pulled out a box that screamed money, shiny ribbon, silk lining, the kind of packaging I'd never in my life spent a dime on. Even the bow looked like it cost more than my weekly groceries. David, my daughter's father-in-law, sat up straighter, his crisp shirt glowing in the sunlight that streamed through my small windows. He had that kind of easy posture that only comes from never worrying about bills a day in your life. With a proud little flourish, Lily held up the tickets. "These are for you, David. $13,000. A Mediterranean cruise. Because you deserve the very best for everything you've done for us." The lottery ticket in my palm suddenly felt like nothing at all. I watched David handle the cruise passes carefully, his manicured fingers gliding over the gold lettering. He nodded in approval, his voice smooth and rich. "Now this is a real gift. Your father raised you right." That line cut straight through me. Around the table, everyone shifted uncomfortably. My sister Susan cleared her throat. My nephew James suddenly found his hands fascinating. Nobody wanted to meet my eyes. Lily laughed, sharp and bright, and shot David a look that made my chest tighten. "Dad always said actions speak louder than words," she said. "Some people show love with grand gestures, and others." She waved her hand toward my lottery ticket like it was nothing. I steadied my hands, though they wanted to shake. "I appreciate the thought, Lily. Really, I do." She waved me off with a smirk. "Oh, it's just a little joke. But hey, if you hit the jackpot, don't forget my share. I paid for that ticket." David chuckled, low and satisfied, and added, "Maybe next year Robert will bring something a little more impressive." The sunlight caught everyone's uneasy faces. Susan froze mid-bite. Anastasia, James's wife, suddenly found my old family photos terribly interesting. Even my grandson Mikey, who usually never looked up from his phone, glanced around in confusion. David spread the tickets out like a winning poker hand. 2 weeks in the Mediterranean. First class, private balcony, all-inclusive meals. Now that's the kind of gift that builds memories. My throat tightened. "Sounds wonderful," I murmured. Lily jumped in. "Of course it's wonderful. David has done so much for us. Helped us buy our house, paid for Mikey's private school, even keeps us in our country club. He deserves something this special." Meanwhile, the little $3 slip in my hand felt like it was dissolving. I thought back to all those years of double shifts at the garage, working 16-hour days, rebuilding engines just to scrape together enough for Lily's college tuition and books. I remembered falling asleep in my chair, too tired to crawl into bed. "Well," I said quietly, "I hope you both enjoy the cruise." "We will," David replied, sliding the tickets back into their box with all the care of a man handling treasure. This is how families should treat each other, with respect and generosity. The dinner conversation rolled on, but my eyes stayed fixed on that little piece of paper in my hand. $2. The same amount I used to slip into Lily's hand when she was a kid for an ice cream cone. Back then, it was enough to make her smile light up the whole world. Dinner ended quickly after that. Car doors slammed, engines hummed, voices faded. I sat alone at the table, the lottery ticket beside my empty coffee cup, watching the sunlight vanish from my dining room. The quiet of my house wrapped around me like an old blanket. The next morning, The ticket lay untouched by the window, forgotten in the daylight. I sat at my laptop, scrolling through my monthly bank statement, something I'd been doing for 40 years. First as a young dad, counting every penny. Now as a retiree, guarding what little I had left. Line after line looked normal: utilities, groceries, the small amount I'd spent on Father's Day dinner. Everything matched, everything expected, until one line made my coffee freeze mid-sip. Premium travel services, $14,600. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and read it again. The number didn't change. My hands shook as I checked the date. Just last Thursday. I hadn't been near a travel agency. And then it hit me. Lily still had access to my account. I'd given her that right years ago, back when her mother passed, in case of emergencies. I'd forgotten all about it. The phone felt like it weighed 10 pounds as I dialed her number. Each ring echoed through the quiet Kit Lee, thudding against my ribs. "Hello, Dad." Her voice had that bored edge she used whenever I interrupted her busy life. "Lily," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm looking at my bank statement. There's a charge here, over $13,000. Premium travel services. You want to explain that?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Lily gave a light laugh, the kind you'd use to brush off something unimportant. "Oh, that charge. I bought Dad David his cruise. He deserves something nice for once." Her words landed like a slap across my face. "You took $13,000 from my account without asking." My voice cracked. "I didn't take anything, Dad. I used family money for a family gift." Her tone shifted, edging toward defensive. "You wouldn't have spent it anyway. It was just sitting there." "Lily, that's theft." I could hardly force the word out. "You stole from me." "It's not stealing when it's family money," she snapped. "David has always been there for us. He helped us when we were struggling. This is just paying him back." My hand clenched tighter around the phone. "I'm your father, Lily. I raised you. I broke my back working double shifts to put you through college." She cut me off sharply. "And David helped us move beyond that. He's shown us what real success looks like, what it means to live well, to give meaningful gifts instead of," she let out a long, dismissive sigh, "instead of lottery tickets." The cruelty in her voice left me hollow. This was my daughter, the same little girl who used to curl up in my lap while I read bedtime stories, the teenager who cried on my shoulder the night her mother passed away, the young woman who once called me her hero. "Dad, are you still there?" "I'm here," I whispered. "Look, I know you're upset, but think about it rationally. David earned this. He's successful. He's done so much for us. He deserves recognition for everything he's given our family." I swallowed hard. "And what about everything I've done?" There was silence. When she spoke again, her voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. "You did what fathers are supposed to do. David went above and beyond." Then the line went dead. I sat there staring at the phone, the dial tone buzzing in my Kit Lee like a funeral bell. My hands trembled as I set it down. The same hands that once held her as a baby, guided her as she wobbled on a bike, clapped for her at graduation. I went to my nightstand and picked up the lottery ticket, the pathetic $3 joke she'd tossed at me like scraps to a dog. Even that insult had been bought with my own stolen money. The irony was almost too perfect. For a moment, I nearly laughed. Instead, I crushed the ticket in my fist and tossed it into the Kit Lee trash can. The soft thud as it landed among coffee grounds and tin cans felt final, like burying what little pride I had left. Suddenly the house felt smaller, the walls pressing in. I needed to breathe, to escape the echo of her betrayal that clung to every corner of my home. I grabbed my jacket and headed outside. The morning air was crisp, carrying the hum of suburban life. Lawnmowers sputtering awake, kids shouting in yards, neighbors calling hellos across fences. Mrs. Davies waved from her garden, her arthritic hands tending to her palado plants. "Beautiful morning, Robert," she called. "Yes, it is," I answered opalatically, though the world around me felt anything but beautiful. I passed the miller's place, where Paul was teaching his grandson to throw a baseball. The boys' laughter drifted through the air, pure and uncomplicated. I remembered doing the same with Lily, her little hands gripping the ball, her face glowing when she finally nailed the throw. When had that changed? When had my love stopped being enough? When had my life become something she was ashamed of? The questions followed me down Maple Street, past the corner market where I used to buy her candy, past the park where she'd race through the grass on long summer afternoons. Every memory felt poisoned now, seen through the lens of what she had become. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a second, hope rose in me. Maybe she regretted it. Maybe she realized how wrong she'd been. The message read, "Dad, I talked to David about the money. He thinks you're overreacting. It's not like you needed it for anything important. We'll pay you back when we can. Maybe at Christmas." "Kay." I stopped in my tracks. Read it once, twice, a third time. "When we can." Like $13,000 was pocket change. Like my security, my dignity, was negotiable. Before I could reply, my phone rang. Susan's name lit up the screen. "Robert, are you okay? Lily called me. Said you were upset about some money thing. She stole $13,000 from my account, Susan." My voice was flat, drained of emotion. "Bought her father-in-law a cruise." Silence. "Then she what?" "She still had access to my account. Used it to buy David a $14,000 cruise for Father's Day. She gave me a $3 lottery ticket and told me half the winnings were hers." "Jesus, Robert. Are you sure? Maybe there's some mistake." "She admitted it. Told me it wasn't really stealing because it was family money. Said David deserved it because he's been generous to them. Unlike me." I laughed bitterly. The sound didn't even feel like it belonged to me. Susan's voice softened. "Robert, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she'd turned into. I don't even know what to call it." "Cruel," I said. "She's become cruel." We talked a little longer. Susan offering to come by, to call Lily herself, to help. But there was nothing she or anyone could do. My daughter had shown me exactly what I meant to her. No intervention could change that. I walked home slowly, my legs heavy with a weight no amount of rest could lift. The house looked different when I stepped inside. Smaller, shabbier, like I was seeing it through my daughter's dismissive eyes. In the Kit Lee trash sat the crumpled lottery ticket, the symbol of a joke that had unraveled everything. I stared at it for a long time, hearing her laugh echo across the table again. Tomorrow, I would call the bank. I would revoke her access, take the steps I should have taken years ago. But tonight, I would sit in my quiet house and mourn. Mourn the daughter I lost somewhere along the way. Mourn the bond one didn't realize had already died. The lottery ticket stayed buried in the trash, worthless, forgotten, while I grieved for something far more precious I could never get back. And then the next morning came, with the kind of brutal clarity only a sleepless night can bring. I was sitting at my Kit Lee table, my coffee untouched and cooling, staring at a phone number I'd scribbled on a scrap of paper from the bag. For the first time in nearly a full day, my hands weren't trembling. I dialed. First National Bank, Cuz Pauler Service. "This is Rebecca. How can I assist you today?" Came the voice on the line. "I need to cancel someone's authorized access to my account," I told her firmly. "There have been purchases made that I never approved." To my surprise, the whole thing went smoothly. Rebecca spoke with this polished, professional kindness that felt steadying, like she understood without judgment. She walked me through every step, and in less than 15 minutes Lily's access was gone. Fresh security measures were locked into place, and for the first time in years I felt something solid, like I was finally protecting myself. "Anything else I can help you with, Mr. Hayes?" she asked. "No," I said, exhaling. "That's all. Thank you." I ended the call and glanced around my Kit Lee as if I were seeing it for the first time. The space wasn't fancy, never had been, but it didn't feel small or shabby anymore. It felt honest, clean, mine. Then my eyes landed on the trash can, and it hit me. The lottery ticket was still crumpled in there with the coffee grounds. That stupid $3 ticket, the so-called gift that started this whole mess. Bought with my own stolen money and handed to me like some petty prize. I stepped over, staring down at the crumpled slip of paper. Even that pathetic gesture had been bought with money taken from me. The irony stung. She'd stolen from me just to buy me a present, and then had the nerve to claim half of the winnings if there ever were any. Suddenly angry, I yanked the ticket out, flattened it against the counter, and glared at the numbers. 074, 23, 35, 42, Powerball 18. I locked them into memory, those digits that somehow captured everything broken between me and my daughter. Then, with a hard fist, I crushed the paper again and tossed it back in the trash, this time with more force than needed. The morning stretched ahead, quiet, empty, too full of thoughts. I needed air, movement, distance from the Kit Lee walls that still echoed yesterday's betrayal. Grabbing my jacket, I stepped outside and let my feet lead me down the streets I'd known all my life. The air was sharp, alive with the hum of real life. Lawnmowers coughing awake, kids laughing in yards, neighbors calling across fences. Mrs. Davies was out tending her roses, her worn hands cradling them like treasures. She looked up and smiled warmly. "Morning, Robert. You're up and out early." "Couldn't sleep," I admitted, pausing at her fence. "Figured a walk might help clear my head." She gave a knowing nod. "Sometimes the best thinking happens when your feet are moving." "My Ragnar used to say the same," I said. Her late husband had been a good man, a mechanic like me, a man who worked hard, treated people fairly, and knew that what mattered wasn't a bank balance but the kind of person you chose to be. He was right about that, I added, then kept walking. A few houses down, I passed the Millers. Paul was out with his grandson, both of them washing the car. The little boy was more intent on splashing around than scrubbing, but Paul didn't mind. Their laughter drifted down the street, light and unburdened. 2 blocks further stood the old corner market where I used to buy carrot candy as a kid. Mr. Lee was in the window, arranging apples and oranges one by one with quiet pride. 30 years he'd been here, never chasing riches, just serving the community with dignity and respect. As I walked, I couldn't help but notice the pattern. These people, my neighbors, they understood something Lily had long forgotten. That there's real honor in honest work, in treating people right, in building bonds that money can't buy. My phone buzzed with a text. My heart gave a small leap. Maybe it was Lily, maybe she'd come to her senses. "Dad," I talked to David about the money situation. "He thinks you're overreacting. It's not like you needed it for anything important. We'll pay you back when we can, maybe for Christmas." "'Kay." I stopped dead. "Read it again." The words cut sharp, my daughter brushing off $14,000 like it was pocket change, as if my security, my savings, my dignity were all trivial. A vague promise of repayment months down the road. And just like that, everything came into focus. This was who she was now. This was what I meant to her. I deleted the message without replying and kept walking. The familiar streets wrapped around me like an old blanket, filled with the honest noise of ordinary life. Whatever was coming, I'd meet it head on, with my dignity intact. Back at home, the lottery ticket lay forgotten in the trash. Worthless. Just paper. I walked forward, chin high, determined to keep moving toward whatever came next. 3 days passed after that call with the bank. 3 quiet days filled with simple meals, morning coffee, and the kind of peace that comes when you know you've finally done the right thing. I was standing at the stove, stirring scrambled eggs in my old cast-iron skillet, when the phone shattered the stillness with its shrill ring. "Dad, what the hell did you do to my card?" Lily's voice blasted through the receiver before I could even say hello. "It got declined at Nordstrom. Do you know how humiliating that was?" I set the spatula down slowly, surprised by how steady my hand felt. "I removed your access after you took $13,000 from my account," I told her flatly. "I didn't steal anything," she snapped, her voice climbing the way it used to when she got caught lying as a teenager. "That money was for family, someone who actually pulls their weight around here." "You never asked me, Lily. You just took it," I said. I could hear the shuffle of bags, the hum of mall noise. She was standing outside some high-end store, furious because her little world had been shaken. "I was holding an $800 handbag, Dad," she shouted. $800. The cashier ran my card 3 times before announcing, loud enough for everyone, that it was declined. People were staring. Do you know how cheap I looked? The way she said cheap, like not being able to throw away nearly $1,000 on a purse was some kind of personal disgrace, made my chest tighten. "I'm sorry you were embarrassed," I said evenly. "But that doesn't erase what you did." She laughed, sharp and humorless. What I did was treat David the way he deserves, with respect. Something you've never figured out." I hung up and looked around my modest Kit Lee with fresh eyes. The scratched linoleum floor, the chipped appliances, the simple table where I ate my solitary meals. Suddenly, it all felt unreal, like a movie set about to be replaced with something completely different. The lottery ticket sat on the table, still damp from its rescue from the trash, still crumpled from the force of my angry toss. Lily's voice echoed in my memory. "If you win, remember half is mine." I barely slept that night, alternately staring at the ticket and at the ceiling in disbelief. By morning, I convinced myself it must be a mistake, a hallucination born of stress and isolation. But the numbers hadn't changed, and the ticket, despite its journey through the garbage, was undeniably real. Downtown Columbus looked more impressive than I expected. Glass and steel reached toward the gray March sky. Security guards stood like sentinels, and the whole atmosphere screamed serious business. I clutched the ticket in a plastic sleeve, my palms slick despite the cool morning air. "Mr. Hayes?" A woman, Elizabeth Lee, greeted me with a professional smile as she examined my bedraggled ticket. "Quite a story. Found it in your trash?" she asked. I nodded, threw it away in anger. My daughter bought it as a Father's Day gift, but, well, it's complicated. Elizabeth gave me a small, understanding nod and placed the ticket under a specialized scanner. "We see all kinds of situations here. The important thing is verification. And I'm happy to tell you, Mr. Hayes, this is indeed a winning ticket." Her words echoed in the sterile office. I gripped the arms of the chair, half afraid I might float away. She continued, "Our verification process takes 48 hours for prizes this large. We'll confirm the ticket's authenticity, prepare the legal paperwork, and arrange the payout." I nodded numbly, signing forms and handing over identification, barely processing the flood of information, taxes, payment options, publicity procedures. By the time I left, my head was swimming, but one fact remained crystal clear. I was worth $150 million. The drive home felt strange. Familiar streets, corners, grocery stores, Mrs. Davies's rose garden, even the elementary school where Lily had learned to read. All looked exactly the same, yet I felt like an outsider observing someone else's life. I'd been home less than an hour when Lily's car screeched into the driveway. She barreled through the front door without knocking, face flushed with excitement and determination. "Dad, I heard about the lottery. Some woman at the office knows someone who works at the commission. She saw your name on the winner's list." I stayed seated at the Kitley table, the official lottery paperwork spread before me like evidence in a trial. "Hello, Lily," I said calmly. "Don't hello me." She practically vibrated with energy. "Do you realize what this means? We're millionaires. Remember what I said? Half is mine." "That was a gift, Lily," I said, calmer than I felt. "You can't take back a gift." Her expression hardened. "We had an agreement. Everyone at dinner heard me say it. Witnesses, Dad. Legal witnesses." "You threw that ticket at me like garbage," I said quietly. "You bought it with money you stole from my account. It was never about sharing anything." "Stole?" Her voice pitched higher. "I used family money for a family purpose. Now you're trying to cheat me out of what's rightfully mine." I looked at her, really looked, and saw a stranger. The little girl who used to climb into my lap for bedtime stories was gone, replaced by someone whose first thought upon learning of my good fortune was how much she could claim. "The ticket was a gift," I repeated. "Whatever your intentions, it became mine the moment you gave it to me." "I'll sue you." She slammed her hand on the table, sending the lottery papers jumping. "I'll prove that ticket belongs to me. I'll take you to court and make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are." "And what kind of man am I, Lily?" I asked calmly. She paused, chest heaving with anger. For a moment, I thought I saw recognition, or maybe shame, flicker across her face. But it vanished quickly, replaced by cold determination, the kind that steals from your own daughter. She stormed out as dramatically as she'd arrived, leaving her parting shot hanging in the air like smoke. I listened to her car engine fade into the distance, and then looked down at the official documentation before me. $150 million. More money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And all I felt was exhaustion. I woke the next morning to the relentless buzzing of my phone. 15 missed calls, 12 texts, and a flood of social media notifications that made my Spalac drop before I was even fully awake. The first Facebook post appeared at 6:57 a.m. timestamp, just as most people were starting their day. "Urgent. My father has stolen my lottery ticket and is claiming the entire jackpot for himself. This is the same man who cut off my access to family money and publicly humiliated me. The ticket was my gift with the understanding that winnings would be shared. This is elder abuse in reverse. Please share. I need people to know the truth." Attached was a photo of me from last Christmas, serious and stern in a holiday sweater. Comments were already piling up like wildfire. But Lily hadn't stopped there. Her Instagram featured a tearful video of her sitting in her car, moss lily running down her cheeks. I don't usually air family business like this, she said directly to the camera, but I'm desperate. My own father has stolen my lottery ticket, literally stolen it, and now he's claiming the full $150 million for himself. I bought that ticket as a Father's Day gift. I joked, half is mine, because that's what you do with family, right? You share. But apparently, my father heard it as some sort of legal challenge instead of a daughter's love. David had launched his own campaign across LinkedIn and Facebook, his posts carrying the weight of professional credibility. Witnessing financial elder abuse is devastating, but reverse elder abuse, when an adult child is betrayed by their parent, can tear families apart just as thoroughly. When older individuals become obsessed with money to the point of betraying their children's trust, everyone loses. My wife was heartbroken over her father's greed. The ticket had been purchased as a gift, with a clear understanding that any winnings would be shared. And yet, here I was, being told he claimed exclusive ownership. This kind of behavior destroys families and communities. My phone buzzed again. Susan, Robert, what in God's name is happening? She said, panic in her voice. My neighbor just called asking if you really stole Lily's lottery ticket. Social media is going crazy. I tried to explain it as simply as possible, but even to me, it sounded convoluted. Yes, Lily bought the ticket. Yes, she made jokes about sharing. Yes, I actually won. No, I don't believe I owe her anything. But Robert, Susan said gently, she bought it for you. With money she stole from my account. I reminded her. By noon, the story had gone viral in our little corner of the internet. Local Facebook groups buzzed with debates about family loyalty, legal obligations, and morality. The neighborhood app, Nextdoor, was full of heated discussions about the greedy lottery winner on Maple Street. I made the mistake of reading the comments on Lily's posts. This is disgusting. How can a father do this to his daughter? Lawyers need to get involved. This is theft, plain and simple. I know this family. The daughter's always generous. The father's always been weird about money. Team Lily. No way should an old man keep money that belongs to his daughter. David's professional network had mobilized too. Colleagues from his investment firm shared his posts, weighing in on family values and financial ethics. People I'd known for years were publicly backing Lily's side of the story. I closed my laptop and moved to the Kitley window. Outside, 3 neighbors stood near my mailbox, whispering and pointing. When they spotted me at the window, they scattered like guilty children. My phone buzzed with texts from unknown numbers. Channel 6 wants to interview you about the lottery controversy. Can you call us? Columbus Dispatch seeking comment on family lottery dispute. Legal representation available for lottery ticket disputes. Free consultation. I turned off my phone and sat quietly in the Kitley. The official lottery paperwork still lay across the table, sterile and authoritative, like evidence of my supposed guilt. Outside, neighbors whispered and speculated, their judgment filtered through social media and careful distances. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was worth $150 million, and I had never felt more alone in my life. Morning light spilled through the window as I spread printed copies of Lily's social media posts across the table, reading each comment, each share, each sympathetic response like evidence in a trial. My coffee cooled as I absorbed the digital assault on my character. The landline rang, its old mechanical bell cutting through the silence. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the pattern suggested a business line. Mr. Hayes, this is Charles Evans, said a calm, measured voice. David's father. Authority and experience dripped from every word, the kind of voice that came from decades of boardroom negotiations. I believe we need to talk. I gripped the receiver tighter. I'm not sure what there is to discuss, Mr. Evans. There's quite a lot, actually. A pause. Could we meet this morning? Murphy's Diner on 7th Street, in an hour. Murphy's Diner, a modest, family-run restaurant I sometimes visited for their Saturday special. The kind of place David would never be caught dead in. May I ask what this is about? I said cautiously. The lottery ticket, Charles said simply. And what I witnessed on Father's Day. My heart started hammering. You were there. I admitted. 1 hour, Mr. Hayes. Click. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone, unsure what to expect. David's father wanting a sit-down could only mean trouble. Maybe they were coordinating a legal strategy. Or maybe Charles wanted to pressure me into settling with Lily. Curiosity outweighed caution. Murphy's Diner occupied a corner lot, red vinyl booths, checkered linoleum floors, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. I spotted Charles immediately, tailored navy suit, immaculate posture, like a peacock among sparrows. He rose, extending a well-manicured hand. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for coming," he said. We slid into a booth near the window, morning light catching the deep lines around his eyes. Dolores, the motherly waitress who'd served me since my 40s, poured 2 cups of coffee without asking. I witnessed the entire gift exchange on Father's Day. Charles began, without preamble. Every word, every gesture. "Your daughter handed you that lottery ticket explicitly as a Father's Day gift." I studied his face, searching for deception. "She's claiming there was an agreement about splitting winnings," he said, expression hardening. "That's simply not what happened," he continued. I watched her throw that ticket across the table with a laugh. No negotiation, no verbal contract. It was a gift, pure and simple. He pulled out his phone, scrolling with the precision of someone who'd built a business empire in the digital age. "What my son and daughter-in-law are doing is unconscionable. They're destroying your reputation with lies." "You're David's father," I said cautiously. "Why would you go against your own son?" Charles let out a bitter laugh. "Because I raised him to have integrity, and somewhere along the way, he forgot everything I taught him. This lottery situation has revealed something about David that deeply disappoints me." He showed me his phone screen, where he'd begun typing a detailed Facebook post. "I'm going to set the record straight. My name carries weight in this community, Mr. Hayes. People know I don't lie about business matters, and this is exactly that, a matter of legal ownership and ethical behavior." I leaned over as he refined the statement. "As a witness to the Father's Day gathering at Robert Hayes' home, I feel compelled to address the current social media controversy. I personally observed Lily Evans' purchase and present a lottery ticket to her father as a Father's Day gift. There was no negotiation, no agreement about sharing winnings, and no conditions attached to the gift. Mr. Hayes is the rightful owner of that ticket and any winnings it may have generated. The current social media campaign against him is based on false information, and I cannot remain silent while a good man's reputation is being destroyed by members of my own family." "You don't have to do this," I said quietly. "Yes, I do." His finger hovered over the post button. "My son has forgotten what it means to be a man of honor. Perhaps public embarrassment will remind him." He posted the statement, and almost immediately, his phone started buzzing. Comments poured in from people in Columbus's business community, colleagues who knew Charles's reputation for honesty and fair dealing. "This changes everything," I breathed, watching the tide of public opinion shift before my eyes. Charles pocketed his phone and looked at me directly. "Mr. Hayes, I built my business on integrity. I cannot sit by and watch my son destroy that legacy with lies and manipulation." We sat in comfortable silence, watching normal Saturday morning life unfold around us. Families ordering pancakes, elderly couples sharing the newspaper, teenagers texting while their parents tried to engage them. Life continued as usual while my world had been upended. "The truth has a funny way of surfacing," Charles said finally. "Sometimes it just needs the right person to speak it." We shook hands outside the diner, his grip firm and reassuring. As he walked toward his sleek black Mercedes, I remained by my modest sedan, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. 2 weeks later, the call I'd been waiting for finally came. "Mr. Hayes, this is Elizabeth Lee from the Ohio Lottery Commission. Your verification process is complete, and we'd like to invite you to our formal check presentation ceremony tomorrow morning." "A ceremony?" I asked, still processing the magnitude of everything. "Yes. We offer winners the choice of a private meeting or a public presentation. Given the recent attention in your case, we thought a public ceremony would be appropriate." I thought about Lily's social media storm, the whispered conversations at the grocery store, neighbors who no longer made eye contact. "Yes," I said. "I'll take the public ceremony." "Excellent. 10:02 a.m. at our Columbus headquarters. Media will be present, so dress appropriately. Congratulations, Mr. Hayes. This will change your life." That evening, I laid out my best clothes, a navy suit I'd bought for my wife's funeral 8 years ago, a crisp white shirt, and the tie Lily had given me for Christmas 5 years prior, back when things were simpler. The next morning, the lottery headquarters buzzed with activity. Television crews adjusted lights, photographers tested angles, and officials bustled about with clipboards and documents. I felt like an actor who had wandered onto someone else's set. "Mr. Hayes," Elizabeth Lee greeted me with a warm smile. "Ready to become a millionaire?" The ceremony was surprisingly formal. A backdrop with the Ohio Lottery logo, an oversized check that required 2 people to hold, and flashes from cameras enough to light a stadium. When Elizabeth announced me as the winner of the $150 million jackpot, the applause felt surreal. "This is certainly unexpected," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying better than I hoped. "I plan to use this blessing responsibly, to help others pursue dreams I've put aside and live with dignity." Questions from reporters came fast. How did it feel to win? What were my plans? Would I quit working? I answered as honestly as I could, focusing on gratitude and responsibility rather than the family drama that had led me here. Then I saw them. Lily and David pushed through the crowd, her face flushed with determination and desperation. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension. "Stop," she called, her voice cutting across the formal atmosphere. "That's my ticket. We had an agreement." Security personnel moved immediately, but Lily's voice carried over their intervention. "Everyone here needs to know that ticket was mine. He's stealing from his own daughter." Cameras swiveled toward the commotion, capturing every moment. "Ma'am, you need to step back from the ceremony area," a security guard said firmly but politely. I looked directly at Lily, feeling calmer than I had in weeks. "Lily, please don't do this here." But she was beyond reason, gesticulating wildly as David tried to pull her back. "I bought that ticket. I said half was mine. Everyone at that dinner heard me." A reporter thrust a microphone toward me. "Mr. Hayes, can you comment on this family dispute?" I took a breath. "The ticket was a Father's Day gift from my daughter," I said clearly, my voice steady despite the chaos unfolding nearby. "Mr. Charles Evans, who was there at the dinner, has already confirmed exactly what happened with that gift," I said calmly to the reporters. "That's all there is to it." Another reporter jumped in. "So, Mr. Hayes, what do you plan to do with the money?" I thought about Lily screaming in the background, all the months of manipulation, the betrayals, the years I'd spent enabling her worst impulses out of love that hadn't been respected. "I plan to help people who deserve it," I said. "I want to finally start the business I've dreamed about for years, and I intend to live with the kind of integrity that makes someone worthy of good fortune." The ceremony wrapped up with handshakes and paperwork. Outside, Lily and David were still by their BMW in the parking lot, arguing furiously. David's gestures grew more animated, his voice rising to match hers, as if their own greed was cracking their relationship apart. I walked to my car carrying the ceremonial check and official documents that now made me one of the wealthiest men in Ohio. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of them in my rearview mirror, still bickering beside their expensive car. For the first time in months, I smiled. The next morning, I was sitting at my Kitley table, newspaper spread before me, reading about my lottery win in black and white print when I heard a car door slam outside. Through the window, I saw Lily walking up the driveway. But she was different, slow, hesitant, shoulders slumped in defeat. No bold entrance, no aggression. Instead, she knocked lightly on my door, 3 gentle taps that sounded almost apologetic. I opened the door. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, her designer clothes wrinkled as though she'd slept in them. "Dad, could we talk, please?" My paternal instincts stirred despite everything. "Come in, Lily." She followed me to the living room, perching on the edge of the couch like a bird, ready to take flight. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap as she looked around the modest space that had once been her childhood home. "I'm so sorry about yesterday," she began, barely above a whisper. "I was just overwhelmed and scared. I wasn't thinking clearly." Tears streamed down her cheeks with practiced precision. "David has been pressuring me about money. Our finances, they're worse than I let anyone know. I didn't know who else to turn to." I settled into my recliner, keeping careful distance. "What kind of financial trouble, Lily?" "We're about to lose our house," she said, voice cracking. "The mortgage, the credit cards, David's business, it's all falling apart. We owe nearly $600,000, and the bank's starting foreclosure proceedings." She described sleepless nights, panic attacks, frantic attempts to maintain appearances while everything crumbled. David's investment firm was failing, losing clients and hemorrhaging money. The country club membership, The private school tuition for Mikey. They couldn't keep up. I was too embarrassed to ask for help before, she said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. You know how proud David is. He'd die if he knew I was here begging my father for money. I realized painfully that this was a performance. The same techniques she'd used as a teenager. The tears, the helpless damsel routine, the appeals to my protective instincts. You've always been there for me before, she said, reaching for my hand. I just need help one more time. Just enough to save our house and get back on our feet. How much, Lily? $5 million would solve everything, she said quickly, almost rehearsed. It sounds like a lot, but compared to what you won, you'd still have over $120 million left. The simplicity of her request stunned me. $5 million, the equivalent of decades of my pre-lottery income, asked as casually as borrowing $20 for gas. Lily, I said gently, I've heard these same promises before. Her confusion was brief but clear. What do you mean? You stole $25,000 from my account without asking. You publicly humiliated me on social media. You tried to take my lottery ticket by force. And now, you expect me to reward that behavior with $5 million? My voice stayed calm, factual. Her tears came faster now, desperate. I was wrong before. I admit that. But we're talking about losing everything, Dad. Our house, our life, Mikey's education. You need to learn to solve your own problems, I said. The words hung in the room like a challenge. Lily's face shifted, the mask of vulnerability slipping to reveal something harder. You're really going to do this? She asked, voice cutting with that familiar edge. You're going to let your own daughter lose her house while you sit on $120 million? I love you, Lily, I said, but I won't enable your choices anymore. She stood abruptly, pacing to the window and back. Fine, but don't expect to be part of Mikey's life going forward. Don't expect Christmas visits. Don't expect family dinners or phone calls when he graduates high school. The threats came faster now, each one aimed at my deepest fears: loneliness, isolation, the loss of family. No grandchildren at my funeral. No ties to the next generation. A lonely old man, dying alone because he had been too selfish to help his only child. If that's your choice, I said quietly, I'll have to accept it. The calm finality in my voice seemed to shock her. She paused, perhaps realizing that her usual manipulation had finally met its match. You've changed, she said, voice cold with disappointment. Money has made you cruel. No, Lily. Money has made me free. She stormed out without another word, her footsteps echoing on the front walkway as she marched to her car. I watched her drive away, tires squealing as she peeled out of my driveway, anger radiating from her. I turned from the window, looking around my quiet home. A mixture of sadness and relief settled over me. The little girl who once fell asleep in my lap, reading stories, was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize and couldn't save. I walked to the kitchen to make tea, movements calm and deliberate. For the first time in years, my home felt truly peaceful. 3 months later, I stood in my empty living room, phone in hand as movers loaded the last boxes. I scrolled to Lily's contact and tapped block this number. Some bridges, once burned, aren't meant to be rebuilt. The drive to Dayton took 2 hours, rolling through countryside that promised a fresh start. In this new city, I would be simply Robert Hayes, a resident, not the lottery winner splashed across the news. My new house sat on a quiet street, far enough from Columbus that any unexpected visit would require effort. Miller's classic auto restoration had been for sale for months. Walking through the shop, inhaling the familiar scent of motor oil and polish, I knew I had found my purpose. You sure you want this much work? Paul Miller asked, gesturing to project cars filling the bays. Most folks your age are thinking about slowing down. I ran a hand along the fender of a 1967 Mustang. I'm just getting started. Within a week, Miller's became Hayes' classic auto restoration. I hired 3 local mechanics and launched the Single Fathers Foundation, remembering the struggles I faced after my wife died. Evenings in Dayton were peaceful. I could walk without whispered conversations following me. The local diner served coffee without gossip about my life. Settling in okay? Helen, my neighbor, asked, handing me homemade cookies. Quiet is exactly what I hoped for, I said. The shop became my sanctuary. Working alongside younger mechanics, I rediscovered the satisfaction of solving problems with my hands rather than my checkbook. We restored a 1962 Dodge to mint condition. The owner wept when he saw it, and I understood completely. I thought about Lily sometimes, but the sharp pain was gone. The money hadn't changed me. It had only revealed who I'd always been beneath years of enabling others. My phone rang occasionally with unknown numbers. I suspected they were hers, but I let them go to voicemail. One Thursday evening, after finishing a 1969 Charger restoration, I locked up and drove home, passing the community center where my foundation's plaque read, "Supporting strong families through tough times." I parked and looked up at the emerging stars. Somewhere, Lily was living with the consequences of her choices. What I could control was building something meaningful. Every restored car, every foundation grant, was a vote for a world where character mattered more than connections. The lottery ticket now hung framed in my office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that sometimes the most valuable gifts come disguised as garbage, and the most important lessons arrive wrapped in pain. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for watching.